Hugh James is also attending to present the scrutiny comments as Councillor, and I don't know how you say Councillor Dogood's name, is that the right way? Dogood? Cannot attend today. So thank you very much, Councillor Hugh James, for that. The next item is item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest at all? No? Okay. That'll be noted. Thank you very much. And the next item is a very important item, item 4, items from the public. And just to say that we've had questions, 9 questions have been submitted or thereabouts, I think it's 8 or 9. And as usual, details have been circulated and written answers have been sent to the questioners. And these have been published on the website or our website at the Combined Authority alongside the agenda papers. So people can check them out there if they're watching on the live stream. And we've received 24 public statements. Now, I'm going to call people in no particular order. Are those who I think I'm expecting to speak today. They may or may not be here. I won't know until we find out. Is Nigel Shipley around, please? Nigel, hello. Would you like to speak to us, please?
Thank you. The New Economic Support Foundation has reported significant inaccuracies in Bristol Airport's economic benefit argument for expansion. It reported that the airport cherry-picked the methods they used in their analysis to create a grossly overstated expansion argument. The NEF report says that by overstating passenger demand, the claimed economic benefits for the region are inflated by almost 50% for the West of England and 70% for the wider South-West region and Wales. For the estimate of the boost to tourism, the airport uses national data on spend per tourist rather than regional benchmarks, which the NEF says could mean an overestimation of benefits by more than a third. So, if the economic benefits of the expansion of the airport are trivial, what's the justification for it? The 3 local authorities have declared a climate emergency and published plans to reduce our carbon emissions. But we have not seen actions leading to significant reductions. The IPCC tells us that the evidence is irrefutable. Greenhouse gas emissions are choking our planet and placing billions of people in danger. Global heating is affecting every region of Earth, with many of the changes becoming irreversible. We must act decisively now to avert climate catastrophe. You now have an opportunity to lend your voice preventing an additional 1 million tonnes of CO2 emissions per year.
Just another 30 seconds, please.
If you fail to do so, when the crisis is fully upon us, you will look back and see that you were on the wrong side of history. Now is the time to take decisive action to address the climate change by opposing this destructive airport expansion.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, I don't think David Redgwell is here, but just to check, we usually recognise David very quickly. No, David's not here today. I understand he's not been well, so I wish him well if he's watching on the live stream. I think the next person is Councillor Tristan Clark. Is Tristan here? Hi, Tristan.
Hi. I'd like to welcome you all to Frampton Cultural Day. The existential struggle against the climate and ecological emergencies is epoch-making. The objective before us is clear, only the means to attain must be determined. This needs clear, unambiguous leadership from the West of England, not contemptuous myopia that dismisses the concerns of residents and councillors by telling them the airport is not an airplane. A petrol station is not a motor vehicle, but the age of the petrol engine is coming rapidly to a close. That is why we urge members to pass the motion opposing the expansion of Bristol Airport. The review of the West of England's response to the emergencies is to be welcomed if it leads to redoubling of its efforts to tackle them and quicker, more efficient implementation of policies. Ross Johnson may talk the talk, but so far he's failed to deliver. The Green Homes grant was a costly fiasco. The National Audit Office reported this month it was, quote, delivered to an ambitious timetable and was not executed on acceptable standard, significantly limiting its impact on job creation and carbon reduction. The West of England cannot afford to replicate such failures. We therefore call upon the West of England to have a named lead on climate action, just as all the constituent authorities do, to spur on the struggle ahead of us. This will reassure the public that members are not absolving themselves of responsibility for a critical regional response to climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. Appreciate that. Okay, the next person I have on my list, if they're here, Stephen Clark. Spelled differently, the Clark. Hi, Stephen.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much for this speaking. I'm speaking today on behalf of Bristol Airport Action Network, and we'd like to applaud the support of this motion and ask that the parties approve it unanimously. As people probably know, we're currently coming towards the end of a 10-week inquiry considering these expansion plans in Western-super-Mare, so the timing of this, if it's passed, is absolutely excellent. As the motion here today states, this is a huge carbon decision in the region. We've been working to stop this for about 2.5 years, maybe 3 years now, and we crowdfunded for biosphere experts to give evidence to the inspectors. Why? Well, because if this expansion is approved, it would mean 1 million extra tonnes of carbon a year, 10,000 extra car journeys a day, and many more night flights. Mr. Norris talked of the moral dimension in his statement last week, and it's been very noticeable as we've sat through the inquiry, many days of evidence for the inquiry, that this aspect has been entirely missing. However, last Thursday, the public were allowed to make verbal statements, and the inspectors, through the whole day, of impassioned and emotional speeches, almost all made an objection to support. One of the speakers last week, a professor from Bristol University, addressed the moral question that Mr. Norris has referred to. He described it in a very head-on way that is hard to ignore. He worked out, using a methodology from a paper in Nature, I put the reference in my notes, the number of people who will be killed globally just because of the carbon emissions in Bristol Airport. Using the airport's own estimates of emissions, he told us that more than 22 people a week will have early deaths from excess heat alone.
30 seconds more, please.
Because of these emissions. This is only for the excess heat, not including flooding or the other impacts. So let's just think about that for a moment. That statistic alone would make even the most hardened decision maker or politician wonder about supporting these plans. Nearly 300 people a year around the globe being killed just to allow the owner of Bristol Airport to make more profits. We know what local people think. These books represent the comments to the planning website. The yellow ones are objection, the single red one is supporting comments. We ask that you support this motion. It's very timely and it's morally important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Well spoken, thank you. Is Richard Baxter, here? Richard, could you come up, please, and speak to us?
So I'm really pleased to be addressing this special meeting that's been called. I think it's really important. And at last, the anomaly of WECA and the Joint Committee's inconsistent stand on Bristol Airport's plans to expand has the chance to be normalised and fall in line with the many parish, town, district and city councils in the region that have already clearly objected to the expansion plans of the largest carbon emitter in the area. We know climate change is happening right now, and it's got to the point where we can't stop it. Our only chance now is to work collectively to mitigate the effects of a warming planet. But our chances of limiting global temperatures to rises between 1.5 and 2 degrees are evaporating. We are well aware of the issues within this range will affect even more frequenting weather extremes and will lead to lethal floods, heat waves, storms. So in the UK, yeah, we've made some of the easier changes to reduce carbon emissions, but there remains hard and difficult decisions ahead on how we heat and power our homes and workplaces, what we eat, what we buy as consumers, and how we travel. Everyone has to play their part. And therefore it's irresponsible to allow the aviation industry, which has been heavily subsidised for decades, to grow and continue to pump out carbon and other greenhouse emissions over the coming years. The industry is in a tailspin, and it's now finally come to the realisation that it has to drastically reduce its emissions for the good of the whole planet.
30 seconds more,
We
please.
know the technology for zero low carbon flight is in early development, and many sectors say that it's not going to be commercially available for at least a couple of decades. The decision we make today needs to be communicated and logged as evidence in the current planning inquiry. I'm glad to see that during my question that I submitted earlier, that the authority has said we already have ambitious targets for reaching carbon neutrality. As regional leaders, we work in close partnership with other metro mayors to actively lobby government to take action to reduce carbon emissions. The science of climate change continues unabated and has no regard for debates.
Could you wrap your
reports,
comments up now,
reviews.
please?
So the time for procrastination and impossible dreams is long gone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Now, Jackie Head asked that her statement is read out because she's shielding at the moment, and I think Shazia
Thank
is
you,
going
Mayor.
to do us justice and get Jackie's message out there so we can all hear.
So
Shazia.
Jackie Head, statement 21. I'm very disappointed to not be able to read this statement to you today. As someone with a chronic illness and disability which places me on the severe risk category for COVID, I'm not able to enter the council chamber and neither can I join you on Microsoft Teams or Zoom. I believe this is a concerning situation, effectively silencing the voice of disabled people, and would therefore like to ask the committee. It's on. It is. So it's working? Thank you. Okay. In the meantime, I hope you'll feel it is appropriate that this statement is read out by someone to the meeting. The main reason for writing this statement is to thank you for raising the issue of the Bristol Airport expansion and deciding to publicly object to it. I've been fighting against this expansion for the last 2 years, believing it cannot be justified in this present time when we have real dangers from a heating planet and a lack of alternative solutions to managing true zero emissions flight. However, this is also a social justice issue, as so many people who fly do so because of their own privileged position, which limits this luxury to relatively few people and has the greatest impact for those living close to the airports, for those in poorer communities and for the global south. If the government truly wants to level up, one way to do this is to stop treating aviation as an exception, benefiting from no fuel tax whilst cars are taxed for fuels. If this cost were passed on to consumers as a carbon tax, it would help to disincentivise flying and thus prevent the need for airport expansions. In addition, rather than trying to get more jobs at airports, many of which will not be accessible to the less well-off in local areas such as Weston and South Bristol, because there are no adequate public transport links, it would be better to invest in new roles in renewable energy, retrofitting and environmental protection. At the inquiry on Friday, Inspector Ware made it clear that this decision, once made, can be submitted as evidence to the inquiry, and I would urge you to also do this formally as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Shazia, on behalf of Jackie Head, and thank you, Jackie, if you're watching on the live stream. Thank you. Is Councillor Martin Fodor here, please? Martin.
Thanks very much. I'm glad to be here, and I welcome the fact that the young people from the school started this meeting, because that's what we have to bear in mind. It's their generation that we're making decisions for. Yeah. So I took part in your meeting in June, when you were originally going to discuss the Climate Emergency Action Plan, and I'm delighted that you did postpone it, and you did agree to taking a more urgent approach. That's really important. So I welcome the fact you've reconvened to discuss that and the airport expansion motion and the Green Recovery Fund. I've just got a few points to make. Firstly, thank you for the commitment to bringing the airport expansion motion. It's really important that you're willing to do that, and I think people are watching. They're watching that business as usual is not being pursued as usual, and that you're taking on vested interests, sponsors, and people who've been traditionally in positions of power in the region. What's most important is that you're also making a link to a just transition, a transition that transfers the investment from the damaging industries of the past to the opportunities, the new work, the new skills, and the new jobs and sectors of the future, and to share that wealth with the community across this region of the authority and the joint committee. That's so important. So secondly, so thank you for the motion, and I do hope we will all pass that, because you need to show you're making commitments to future generations, as I said. Secondly, the principles for the refreshed climate emergency ambition. I'm afraid after you postponed the meeting, I was waiting for a more ambitious action plan to come forward, and I'm disappointed. You've had 3 months to show more sense of ambition, and what we've got is a new report saying you have the same 5 principles, and that there will now be a report some point in the future showing refreshed ambition.
30 seconds more,
what's
please.
been done? Thank you. What's been done for the last 3 months? Where is that ambition? The hard decisions referred to in the report need to be faced as soon as possible, not put off for a few more months for another report and a board and a new director. They should start now. Finally, I do welcome the £20 million Green Recovery Fund. That is really important. That 3-year programme needs to start now. We need that investment in the new jobs, the new skills, the new opportunities for all our area and our authorities in the Joint Committee. So, we need to see measures of success, but we also see the measures of damage being reduced, transferring from the wrong things to the right things. So let's see that backed and measured in the region to show that you're making the hard choices that we refer to, that you're doing the right things and backing the opportunities of the future. We need new transparency, and we need new ideas, new infrastructure, and everyone else has been referring to those, so thank you for taking note of that.
Thank you very much. Is David Tudgy here, please? David, you're the next person to speak.
Yes, thank you for today. This is the Great Green Britain Week, and we've got our communities across the southwest taking part in activities. And in Bristol, on St Mark's Road, we're actually having a whole high street of communities taking action on climate change, where businesses are there to do that. But they can't do this without your support. We need the infrastructure to be there so that they can connect electric vehicles. So we need Western Power and their owners, National Grid, to invest and commit to your net zero target of 2030, otherwise your vision cannot happen. We have demonstrated with our community actions what we can do when communities are resourced to take forwards projects, such as the onshore wind turbine project in Lawrence Western, which is the largest in England, and will be the largest in England, and actually will supply the equivalent amount of energy as to the number of residents in the Lawrence Western ward. So we really need to see the real desire to take action matched with support. And in Bristol and in urban communities, over 10,000 people, there isn't that support. The response to my question said that South West Energy Hub can help. They can't, not in the way that rural communities can through the Rural Community Energy Fund to develop projects. So we can no longer develop a similar project like that in the way that we did in Lawrence Western with the initial support that we got from the RCEF funding, because that doesn't exist, it used to exist. Urban Community Energy Funding. So we need to see the Green Recovery Fund specifically put funding aside for communities, for community enterprise, community farms, local food production, local energy production, and really to bring in a just energy transition, to actually have a community energy strategy for the west of England. So we need to see this policy, which is part of my question, actually translate into policy in the Climate Emergency Action Plan. And that's
30
what
seconds
I'd
more,
like to
please.
see responded to today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. Really great to hear that. Thank you to everybody who has submitted a statement, and all those comments have been noted and taken into account by the committee today. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to all those who have spoken. It's not easy to speak. We all understand that on this side of these tables. So well done. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item is item 5, comments from the chair of the Local Enterprise Partnership Board, and Richard Bonner, who I introduced a moment ago, who's chair of the Local Enterprise Partnership Board, is given the opportunity to comment at this stage. So over to you, Richard, for your very first time.
This one working.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. So I think working with our business board members over the course of the last week or two, we wanted to just share 2 or 3 key points actually. We wanted to just make some points around the decarbonisation of aviation, but we're really pleased before we do that this meeting has been called. We have the opportunity to present updated plans for the climate emergency. We note from the Jet Zero consultation paper that Bristol Airport is being called out for its good work in helping to reduce its Scope 1 and 2 emissions. And we think that it's very important that we find good examples in the region where actually organisations, whoever they are taking those measures to decarbonise their businesses. And so we do hope that we can work together to find the opportunities where we can share in that learning to make those plans to decarbonise. We've noted that the airports are keen to work with stakeholders to reduce Scope 3 emissions. And from the perspective of the Combined Authority and local authority leaders, we're really keen to ensure that as we develop our transportation plans, we look at how we can reduce carbon from the airport surface access and how we can look to integrate strategic schemes such as mass transit and the funding programmes such as the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement in helping us to remove carbon from our transportation. We all know that the aviation and advanced manufacturing sector is very important in the west of England. It's a significant economic driver, employing thousands of highly skilled and well-paid workers across those supply chains. Again, we have noted in the Jet Zero consultation paper organisations.
Yes.
We're okay? Can I carry on? Yeah, thank you. Right, thank you. Right. Thank you. So we've noted that organisations such as Airbus and Rolls-Royce are leading the way in R&D to accelerate sustainable aviation fuels and zero-emission flights. And we would like to encourage regional leaders to work with stakeholders, including our manufacturing sector, airlines and the airport, to accelerate technologies and methods to reduce Scope 3 emissions from flight. We're keen to work with stakeholders, council mayors, leaders and others in creating the investment, the research and development and the technologies to advance that will accelerate decarbonisation of aviation and drive the economy to be fair and just. Turning to the other matters before us, we fully support the principles of refreshed climate and biodiversity strategy and action plan, and the proposed investment of £20 million for the Green Recovery Fund to support initiatives is very, very welcomed. There is no simple answer, of course, to addressing the climate emergency, but it is clear we need to take action now by working together, and we hope that we have a better chance of achieving the outcomes that will help us on our journey to net zero by 2030. The proposed Regional Climate Board will provide focus and momentum across the region to ensure the work is joined up, and we think that's very, very important, and we support the proposals to create that board. From the perspective of the LEP board, we are strengthening the board with the addition of 2 additional members. Those 2 new recruits will have the skills that will be able to support us on this important issue, so we're strengthening the board so that we can be competent in our ability to work with stakeholders on this very important issue. We support the role of the Environment Director of course. I think we're just very keen to ensure that there's a very clear terms of reference for the board and for the incoming Environment Director. And finally, the LEP board is very keen to work with council mayors and leaders and stakeholders to ensure that we contribute very successfully to delivering on the ambitions for the region. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Richard, and really glad to hear you getting that support in. That's really good. And just to say, for anybody live streaming, Richard has been working hard to make sure I know exactly what the LEP thinks, and doing a very good job indeed on that, and we've heard that again today. Okay, maybe we move to now item 6, please, which are comments from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We've received written comments from that committee following their meeting held yesterday, which actually I attended in Bath in the Guildhall. Copies have been circulated and are available on the website alongside the committee agenda papers if people want to check them out. And Councillor Hugh James, who is attending today, will present these comments. As we heard, the Councillor Dugid, if I said his name properly, cannot attend today. So, Hugh, where are you, Hugh? Sorry, Hugh.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Matt. So today's World Peace Day and World Zero Emissions Day, which days that don't reflect the reality that we're in, but the ambition for a better reality for future generations, such as those children who just introduced the meeting. They're timely, the decisions being made today. The 4 leaders here, alongside the Mayor, have all recognised the climate emergency that we live in various ways. At the Roadmap to Carbon Zero event held earlier this month by the University of West of England in Carbon Mark, we heard Mayor Norris, as well as Councillor Toby Savage and key figures from the Local Enterprise Partnership, all share their carbon stories and hopes and ambitions for 2030 carbon zero target. Our Scrutiny Commission hope this meeting will help unlock that ambition. My apologies for Winston Dugard, the incoming chair of this Overview and Scrutiny Commission, but also thanks to him for choosing me as his substitute in a wish to highlight younger voices in the Combined Authority and to highlight North Somerset's deep integration into this region alongside our joint ambition to achieve climate justice within our region. He didn't realise that children were already here, which much fulfilled the former criteria and did it beautifully and more effectively with fantastic public speaking skills that put us all to shame. Our Scrutiny Commission welcomed the attendance of Mayor Norris at the Overview and Scrutiny meeting yesterday. And I really mean that. It was a refreshing change to have the Mayor engage in constructive dialogue with the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, and we really hope this continues in the future. On to sort of the things within this meeting. I won't highlight too much beyond the written report because you've all had the opportunity to see it, but very important to highlight our thanks to Helen, the Senior Policy Manager, for her presentation of the report. There's been such a change here from the June report, a really remarkable change. We don't quite agree with Councillor Fodal. We just wanted to recognise that a huge amount of extra work has been done, noting a lot of the things that our Scrutiny Commission have asked for in the past. We really support the proposal to create an interim director for the environment. We think that this lead person will be able to really more effectively work with partners to create change. Most of our local authorities do have this sort of director role or someone in charge of climate action, so it's great to see the West of England line up with that. We also welcome a climate board for the same reason. Most of our local authorities have some sort of representative that is in charge of climate action, some sort of executive member. So this really sort of just aligns all the local authorities and the combined authority on that and make sure that they aren't left out. Also, it wouldn't be Overview and Scrutiny Commission comments if we didn't say that we'd love an observer place on those board meetings, like with the rest of the boards. That's something we're really keen to do, just so we can better have input into Overview and Scrutiny. We welcome in particular the specific targets to cut the 464 kilotons of CO2 each year. This is something we can monitor and track. It's important to use data and to be transparent about our achievements. We really welcome those specific targets rather than more vague ambition to just reduce carbon. When we have that target, it means that there's something for us to actually work towards, and for us as a scrutiny panel and as an audit panel separately to be able to monitor. What's left? So Councillor Stephen Clark, who used to be in this position here, is here today, and I'm sure if he were on he'll talk about the Bristol Airport decision. And just, it's been a long-standing view of the Scrutiny Committee that we are against the airport expansion. So just to reiterate that, and as I'm here as a North Somerset member, if you do pass this, if the Combined Authority can speak before Thursday, that would be fantastic. And if you can help share costs towards the planning appeal, that would be very welcome from North Somerset Council, as it pays to be courageous. Or at least it costs to be courageous. The only other thing to mention is the Green Recovery Fund. We think that this fund will sort of create a multiplier effect. We've seen in other combined authorities how having £10 million has made £20 million and so on. So we really welcome having this specific pot that adds additionality to climate change. It doesn't just give a name to a fund that already exists, name to schemes that already exist and say, here, this is green. On top of that, we would welcome an independent expert looking at the viability of all the things that are going into the Green Recovery Fund. Patricia Greer was quite supportive of this in the meeting yesterday, so we hope it goes forward. We really support this combined authority's use of data and seeing what works well when investing in things rather than sort of an ad hoc approach of things that we think might go well. So fantastic work. I think this is the most supportive and positive we've been as a commission for some time, so there we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hugh. Really appreciate it. Okay, and I've written down your points. I'm not sure we'll be able to help with the money, though.
We'll see.
Thank you, but thank you. Okay. Right, we now move to the first substantive item before us today, which is item 7, motion on Bristol Airport expansion for consideration by the West of England Joint Committee. And just for those who are live streaming and those in the room today, the combined authority is the 3 council areas of Bath and North East Somerset, Bristol and South Gloucestershire. And we also have, we work with North Somerset as well on some other things. And that's known as the Joint Committee, so it's the 4 councils, because it's quite confusing. It's hard when you're new to the role, never mind if you're a member of the public trying to make sense of it. So just to be clear about that, so that we know who's voting for what and why maybe. Okay, now the wording of the motion is set out on the agenda for the meeting, and I now formally move that motion as follows, and I'll read it out because not everyone will obviously have the papers to hand. So the motion on Bristol Airport expansion. The Joint Committee, the 4 councils that I just mentioned, recognises that there is a climate and biodiversity emergency, recognises that the West of England has ambitious net zero targets for 2030, recognises that the proposed expansion of Bristol Airport is one of the biggest carbon decisions in the region for the coming decade, recognises that the pandemic has significantly reduced air travel with a 75.6% drop in passenger numbers in 2020, recognises that Bristol Airport's role as an employer in the region, or recognises its role as an employer in the region, and the need for a just transition to a greener economy that does not leave workers worse off, recognises Bristol City Council and Bath and North East Somerset Council's opposition to current airport expansion and North Somerset Council's decision to refuse planning permission to expand beyond 10 million passengers a year. The Joint Committee resolves to oppose the latest plans to expand Bristol Airport. In moving this motion, I would also like to add that I do really feel that it's time for moral leadership. I've talked about this a lot. When I was a minister in the environment, responsible for climate change adaptation actually in England and Wales, 11 years ago, one of the startling statistics that I was told was that Great Britain, the United Kingdom, this very small set of islands, was the 2nd biggest producer of CO2 emissions in the history of the world. That's quite sobering, I think. And I would love it if, having been the first country in the world to have the Industrial Revolution, I would love it if we could be the first industrialised country in the world to have net zero. And so I'm very proud of the ambitious targets that many of the colleagues sitting at these tables today have backed, that we have a net zero target for 2030 in our region. That's a very tough call. It's a really hard thing to achieve. We have to reduce our CO2 emissions by 10% every year, year on year. That is not easy, really hard. But do you know what? I think we should really try to do it. I really believe that's important, and that's why we need moral leadership today with this motion. So, I would ask if there's a seconder, please, for the motion. Kevin, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm aware that we need to probably edit this slightly. I fully support the wording as you just stated it. I think we just need to be a little bit clearer in how we're going to support the aerospace industry to become greener. I think we'd be very, very foolish to think overnight that people are going to stop flying. So we need to do our utmost to encourage the aerospace industry to become as green as possible, as quickly as possible. And I believe that we might have some words to add to that to enhance the motion. But overall, as you've stated previously, Bath and North East Somerset completely oppose the latest plans for expansion of Bristol Airport, and I welcome this WECA decision to also move towards that footing. I was, as with all leaders, was asked to visit the airport, and they went through an excellent list of processes that are becoming greener in and new fire engines, etc. And then they got to the point where I asked them, well, have you included the carbon emissions from planes? And instantly they shut down and went, no. So, you know, it's highly unrealistic to make the public think that you're going to expand your airport and reduce your carbon footprint at the same time. It's impossible to do that. So this motion has my wholehearted support, but I would like the inclusion of being more supportive of the aviation industry becoming greener.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Well, you rightly refer to an amendment that is going to come, and I understand Councillor Savage has put that in, so thank you very much for giving me notice of that, Toby. I appreciate that. It's always helpful to have these things in nice and early so that we can work together on these things. So I'll let you speak, please, to your amendment.
Thank you, Dan, for that, and thank you for the speakers who have come to the meeting today to talk on this item. So I will read the amendment in full, as I'm conscious that you would not have written copies of it. So the Joint Committee recognises there is a climate and biodiversity emergency. The West of England has ambitious net zero targets for 2030. The proposed expansion of Bristol Airport is one of the biggest carbon decisions in the region for the coming decade. The pandemic has significantly reduced air travel, with a 75.6% drop in passenger numbers in 2020 and is expected to recover, although to an unknown level. Bristol Airport's role as an employer in the region and the need for a just transition to a greener economy that does not leave workers worse off. The importance of the wider Aerospace Centre of Excellence at Filton and its major contribution to our economy, skills base and industrial heritage. Ongoing efforts being pioneered locally by industry to decarbonise aviation, including through the Jet Zero initiative. Finally, to recognise Bristol City Council and North Bath and North East Somerset Council's opposition to current airport expansion and North Somerset Council's decision to refuse planning permission to expand beyond 10 million passengers a year. Further recognises the combined authority's role as a transport authority to improve sustainable and decarbonised travel options to and from the airport. Notes with concern the sudden loss of senior WECA officer capability to deliver the step change in public transport improvements needed to serve the airport. The Joint Committee therefore resolves to oppose the carbon emissions associated with the additional expansion of Bristol Airport, represented in their latest planning application, and to request that West of England Chief Executives bring a report back to the October meeting, setting out a range of proposals to support the decarbonising of aviation. So I'd like to propose that, please, Dan.
Okay, thank you very much, Toby. Is there a seconder for that? Okay, John, would you like to speak to that?
I'd like to Yes, I would like to speak to it. I'll have to make the point, colleagues, that because North Somerset Council last year voted to oppose the expansion of the airport to 12 million passengers a year, and there is an extant planning appeal, I have to be very mindful of any statements I make maybe to be taken within that appeal. So please don't think, colleagues, that I don't wholeheartedly endorse the decision that my council made, and we are robustly defending that appeal, as I'm sure many of you at the meetings to support. I do support the motion. The only slight technical change I would say is just to make it very clear that in the combined authority's role as a transport authority, that North Somerset Council is a transport authority in its own right. So we just need, from a technical reason, to make sure that's clear. But other than that, yes, happy to support Councillor Savage's amendment.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, would other members like to speak on this? No? Okay, great. In that case, can we move to voting on the amendment, which is for joint committee members to vote on? So that's for the four combined authority councillors that I mentioned earlier, and includes me voting as the lead for the combined authority as mayor, of course. So will those in favour of the amendment please vote now? Can you please show your hands? Okay, so we've got 3 in support. Okay, those against the amendment? I am one of them. I am it seems. Okay. Okay, now I need to tell you, because I'm not supporting the amendment falls. So we need to move on now, having done that. So I now move an amendment, which I will read out to you again, that people can get familiar with some of this, because Toby's also read what I've read already. But just to be very clear, because I know loads of people are interested across the region. So I now move an amendment as follows. The Joint Committee, which is worded as follows, the Joint Committee recognises that there is a climate and biodiversity emergency, recognises the West of England has ambitious net zero targets for 2030, recognises the proposed expansion of Bristol Airport is one of the biggest carbon decisions in the region for the coming decade, recognises the pandemic has significantly reduced air travel with a 75.6% drop in passenger numbers in 2020, and then there's addition at this point, and is expected to recover, although to an unknown level. Recognises that Bristol Airport's role, this is going back to the original motion, recognises that Bristol Airport's role as an employer in the region and the need for a just transition to a greener economy that does not leave workers worse off. Recognises Bristol City Council and Bath and North East Somerset Council's opposition to current airport expansion, and North Somerset Council's decision to refuse planning permission to expand beyond 10 million passengers a year. And then there's an addition at this point to recognise, and this is the addition, the importance of the wider aerospace centre of excellence at Filton and its major contribution to our economy, skills base and industrial heritage, recognises, again another addition, ongoing efforts being pioneered locally by industry to decarbonise aviation, including through the Jet Zero initiative, further recognises the combined authority's role as transport authority for its area to improve sustainable and decarbonised travel options to and from the airport. The Joint Committee resolves to oppose the latest plans to expand Bristol Airport, and there's an addition supporting North Somerset Council's position in refusing Bristol Airport's latest planning application, which is currently the subject of an appeal inquiry, and to oppose the additional expansion of Bristol Airport represented in that planning application. Then a further addition, opposing the carbon emissions associated with the additional expansion of Bristol Airport represented in their latest planning application, and a further addition to request that the West of England Chief Executives bring a report back to the October 2021 meeting of the Combined Authority, setting out a range of proposals to support the decarbonisation, or decarbonising of aviation. Is there a seconder, please, for that amendment?
Yes, Mayor, I'll second that. I think if people are watching this, they'll probably think it's semantics about the use of the English language. I think it's really important that people that are watching see that us as WECA, and hopefully this will be passed unanimously, that we are opposed to the current plans for the expansion of Bristol Airport. And I think you're right, Dan, that those words are incorporated in there at some point. And I'm really pleased that you've taken on board the amendments put forward, particularly around supporting the aviation industry to become greener. So I'm more than happy to second the amendment of the amendment of the amendment.
Thank you very much. And thanks for bearing with us, because this is riveting stuff, I know. Would any colleagues...
Because it's a joint committee piece, it needs to come back to the joint committee, not to WECA in the last paragraph.
Okay. Thank you. Just bear with me, please, Don. Thank you.
Yes, we'll put those words in. The report will come back to.
Are you content with that, Don? Fine. Thanks. Well spotted. Very important. Thank you. Okay, so I will now move to the voting on the amendment, which is for joint committee. Oh, sorry, we're going to speak. Sorry, Toby. Sorry. Come in, Toby.
No, that's fine, Dan. Thank you very much for that. So I welcome your amendments to the original motion as printed, and for taking on board the emissions that we had highlighted. I think it is really important that we recognise the strong aerospace industry that we have within the region. We want that to thrive, but we need to do more to help the industry with its decarbonising efforts, and I'm pleased that is now reflected in here, including support around the Jet Zero initiative. I also recognise and welcome the acknowledgement now that the Combined Authority has got a role as the Transport Authority to improve the travel choices, sustainable travel choices that people have, because that is clearly something that is in our direct gift to be able to influence carbon emissions associated with the airport. I do note that if I've followed your amendment correctly, that the one aspect of my original amendment that hasn't been included was reference to the sudden departure of the Director of Infrastructure, and I think that the reason that was in there was just to recognise the huge loss that is to us as a combined authority. Enormously respected officer who understood the importance of collaborative and partnership working. And I just wanted to make sure that was on record, our thanks to him, and the sad circumstances in which, and sudden circumstances in which he is left just 2 weeks from giving his resignation to actually permanently leaving the Combined Authority. I note the explicit reference to opposing the latest plans to expand Bristol Airport, and whilst I do not doubt how strong people feel about this, I think we just need to be realistic as to how meaningful it actually is for the Combined Authority to be opposing the airport's expansion. The airport doesn't sit within WECA's footprint, and the Combined Authority isn't the planning authority. So I do question how meaningful it actually is for us to be opposing it, and it's perhaps as useful as a chocolate teapot. But I recognise, finally, the importance of the report that is going to be coming back to this meeting, that again can show what the Combined Authority is actually able to do, and what is in its gift to be helping to support the aerospace industry to further decarbonise. So there is far more within this this amendment that I am supportive of than I am sceptical, so I will be voting for it.
Thank you very much, Toby. Okay, in that case, I'll now move to the voting on... Oh, sorry, Don. I'm having a good day today, aren't I?
Well, I mean, thank you, colleagues, for this. I mean, this isn't, as Councillor Savage points out, it's a North Somerset matter, and it isn't directly within the WECA envelope, but the support of the surrounding authorities for our decision to refuse the expansion, while we have the planning appeal underway is hugely uplifting for us as an authority. So thank you.
Thank you, Don. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wants to come in? Because I'm tending to leave people out. Did you want to come in? No? Okay, that's fine. Well, look, thank you very much. We'll go to the vote. What I just quickly say is that I think the people are ahead of the politicians on this issue. And moral leadership is important. Moral leadership is the thing that created the NHS, for example. People told lots of us that wasn't possible, that would never work. People wouldn't benefit at all. And now, even its fiercest critics at the time are now 100% behind it, or at least they say they are. So actually, moral leadership is really important. And I'm really proud if this motion is carried that we are showing that moral leadership. I think it really makes a difference. Okay, in that case, if no one else wants to speak, please, I shall now finally move to the voting on the amendment, which is for joint committee members to vote on. Will all those in favour of the amendment please vote now? Okay, is that recorded? Cool. Okay, those against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. I therefore declare that amendment has been carried. And given that the amendment has been carried, that effectively now becomes the substantive motion, of course, to vote on, including the amendment. So will all those in favour of the substantive motion, including the amendment which we've just passed, please vote now by show of hands. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions, please? Thank you. Okay. I then declare that motion has been approved. Thank you very much, everybody, for all your comments. I know that all the views were held sincerely. I don't ever doubt that, and I'm really grateful for the support for that motion today. Really important, I believe. Okay, we're going to move on to item 8, which is Principles for a Refreshed Climate Emergency Ambition. This report sets out an overview of the principles for refreshing the ambition for climate emergency and how these principles will be implemented. I now move to the recommendation for the combined authority as set out in the report. Could I please ask if there's a seconder for that?
Dan, if I may speak
Yep, of course.
On this one. I'm afraid I'm not in a position to be able to second
Okay.
The recommendation for reasons that I will explain later. But just to give you notice that something that has been circulated, which is a new recommendation on this specific point.
Okay, thank you very much, Toby. Yeah.
Can I just...
Go on.
Yes, well, this sounds really pedantic, doesn't it? But I hope you'll get the point. Is surely the recommendations are the wrong way round. Because if we don't agree the principles, then the next item is somewhat irrelevant, isn't it? So should we not do the joint committee approve of the principle and then discuss the detail for the WECA combined authority piece?
Yeah, we're happy to do that. Okay, so in that case, can I move the recommendation for the joint committee as set out in the report? So I've moved that. Can I call for a seconder, please? Seconder for that, okay. 2 seconders, yeah. Great. Would you like to speak, please?
Well, we'll both speak.
Yes.
Yeah, you choose who wants to go first.
Very amicable table.
Well, yes, I mean, we did ask for more work to be done, and as indeed the Scrutiny Overview Committee have commented, the piece of work that's come back is certainly moving the right way. The only question I have, which is for us rather than the report writer, is us then making sure that we ambitiously deliver on this. And I do think the whole piece needs to be, we've lost 6 months, we won't get that 6 months back, therefore we need to accelerate delivery even more so. So my support is with the new, more ambitious paper, but also my ambition on delivery has to be greater to make up for the lost time up to 2030. So I think all the way through, I shall certainly be challenging as to how far we are in terms of delivery and what's preventing us from getting to that net zero by 2030 target, which, as you said, Metro Mayor Norris, is incredibly ambitious. 10% a year is a lot, And to do it 1 year is difficult, to do it for every year is even more stretching. But I think that the people that have spoken here today and have submitted statements expect it of us. And we now have to show that we have their same ambition. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you, Dan. First of all, I'd like to thank the WECA officers and all the Combined Authority officers. This is a prime example. So many months ago, we looked at this paper. One of the first things I looked at coming on the board, and it was clearly not as ambitious or as dynamic as we wanted it to be. This is the top issue that affects all the other issues. WECA's main responsibility is to do transport, and if you don't embed the climate emergency into your transport delivery, you're not getting transport correct, in my opinion. So I'm really, really impressed, and this is a really good example of how WECA and the local authorities have worked hand in glove to produce a far more ambitious paper. And I really do appreciate the scrutiny board's comments on this, because this is a scrutiny board is obviously made up of all the political colours in the rainbow, and they've obviously seen this is clearly a far more ambitious and bold plan, and I really, really support that. To make sure we've got some teeth in the delivery of this, and to build on what Don said, I think we need just to add something to this, and we've discussed this earlier, and I've discussed it with the other leaders and mayors as well, that this new climate board that we're having and we're embedding doesn't become the same type of talking shop that the other boards are, where officers are just delivering bits of information and politicians just sitting there absorbing it. It really needs to be a board that's got some proper teeth, can really measure the progress of some really ambitious climate targets. So I would welcome and fully support all the details and all the wording in this new report, but I would add that a full review of the governance and terms of reference for the new climate board should be approved by WECA at the next joint committee in October. So.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Okay, so in that case, let me just see. Okay, so I think I'm right in saying we now need somebody to second your proposed amendment. Is that right, Kevin? I think that's where we're at. So is there a seconder for that?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, either myself or Craig. Yep.
Okay.
Very agreeable. Take whatever. Yeah.
Right. Would you like to speak, Toby, then, and then we'll just see if other people want to come in as well.
Thank you, Dan. Well, yeah, just to not to want to repeat everything that Kevin has said, but I think that there are lessons that we need to learn for how collaborative and partnership working has actually worked in the last few months, and to make sure that the climate board doesn't fall into the same trap that we have fallen into with the other boards, and to feel that our voices, from our respective populations are being listened to, and I think. Yeah, so I'm not going to be repeating what Kevin said, so I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you very much.
So very similarly, yeah. So I also support the amendment, and I would probably have said exactly the same things that Kevin and Toby just said. So I probably won't say them again. But it's another call for collaborative working, I think.
Yeah. Okay, that's heard very clearly. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. Is there anybody else who wants to speak? Don, do you want to come in on this?
Only welcoming the terms of reference and the greater detail on the board. I think that the word board is not helpful in this instance, because we already have a set of boards who have some quite detailed technical ambitions, which they deliver against housing, planning. This does need to be completely different to that, and I think we need to make sure that though we're using the word board, I prefer we did something else to emphasise its difference. And I'm just looking at Richard Bonner, the chair of the LEP, and I think the involvement of business in this for me is absolutely key. The voice of business, voice of communities. It has to be cross-cutting over the whole of the west of England if it's going to have any traction whatsoever. So if we think of a better word than board, I really appreciate it. I've not got an immediate suggestion. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. Well, what I'd certainly say is that I don't care what it's called, as long as it does the job that it needs to do, and we can work out a name for that. I hope we take a lot less time than we did with our motion for the airport. On that basis, the board will have been and gone, long gone. So look, let's think about a better word. I'm absolutely for that. But what I do want to say is, look, targets are key. We want numbers to this because we've got to have measurable outcomes, and therefore we've got to know what's happening now and what's going on in the future. So that's really, really important, and that's why I'm very keen that we have this board, or whatever we end up calling it. We do want the collaboration. Richard's here today. He's strongly bent my ear on all sorts of business issues, and business have a range of views. I don't want anyone to think that business have one view. There are many enlightened businesses that are very keen on a whole range of environmental things and see that as a huge advantage to their businesses and to job creation in our region and so on and so forth. And we, involving businesses is just one thing, because I think we need to involve trade unionists, I think we need to involve a whole range of voluntary groups, anybody who can make us wiser, smarter, more aware of the good ideas that are out there. And I'm really pleased when we heard from Scrutiny Committee, that they were feeding back that they felt this was a positive thing, because I share that, and I'm glad that they feel that too. But what I'm sure all my colleagues will say today is that whatever we do, we will be better through that collaboration and that wider menu of inputs than we've had in the past, and we're determined to do that. So look, I'm sure the audience and those who are watching us on the live stream will keep us on our toes, but I think it's an important intent that we get on with that. Okay, now I think we have to take a vote on that amendment. Am I right in saying that's where we're at, in case I forgot where I am on the business? So could those in favour of that amendment please raise their hand? Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against, which is me on this occasion, I'm afraid, and because of that, it's lost. So what we need to do now, I understand there's another amendment coming up. Is that right? Which I think is
just check this,
yeah,
because some of us who've been involved with the Joint Committee for quite a long time, I thought it was a majority, and it's only the WECA business as the mayor has a veto.
We'll check on that, Don, because it is complicated.
No. So the voting arrangements for the Joint Committee are actually set out in our constitution, and their terms of reference are very specific in terms of voting. And on that basis, the usual arrangements would mean that the mayor actually has to vote in favour. So if you read the terms of reference, the voting is really clear, and it does say specifically that these are the voting arrangements applicable to Joint Committee and shall be referred to.
Okay, Don, so I think that's pretty clear advice. Okay, so I understand there's another amendment coming through.
Chair, sorry.
Sorry.
Before moving on to the other amendment, I think because the amendment to the Joint Committee has fallen,
yeah,
it'd be possibly best to go now to the substantive recommendation of the
Okay.
Joint Committee for a vote before moving to the combined authority bit.
Okay, fine. Okay, I'll move to the voting for the recommendation on the combined authority committee members. Is that right, or is it the joint?
It's the joint committee.
Yeah, let's do the joint one. Sorry, this is where it gets confusing for me. Apologies for that. Thanks for bearing with me. So I shall now move to the voting on the recommendation for joint committee members. Okay, and that is the recommendation is to agree the principles for a revised ambition to address the climate emergency. Those in favour of that, please show.
Well, are we allowed to speak on the substantive?
Yes, is that in that case you are, yeah.
Before I come to those comments on the substantive motion, I think, Dan, if you could share with us why you voted against that amendment. So I didn't hear a sort of an explanation for that. It would help us to understand it. And my second point around what's just happened is I'm also surprised to hear the advice around the voting arrangements for this. I just wanted to understand if the Chief Legal Officer has shared that advice with the Chief Executive Officers of the constituent authorities in advance of today's meeting.
Okay, does the Chief Executive want to speak to that?
I have the legal advice which we printed just before the meeting, and I can share that.
So it wasn't shared with the Chief Executive Officers before today's meeting?
No.
It was only obtained about an hour before the meeting.
I'm going to need to take my own advice as I'm sure the other constituent authority leaders will need to around the legality of that, given how late that advice has come through and the fundamental issues it raises around the operation of the Joint Committee.
Okay, that's obviously what you must do, I understand that. Okay, you asked me the reasons. Look, we just need to crack on with it, Toby. We can't wait. This is an important role, an important initiative that we're trying to create. We're in a climate emergency, and the key is the word emergency. So I voted the way I have because I want us to crack on. I don't want to wait until October. A lot of things can happen in the next few weeks. And we can always revisit these things. It's not like forever. We're always able to have these discussions, but I do want to make the most use of this time. So that's what my thinking was and why I voted the way I did. Okay. Ian, could you just remind me where I'm at now, please?
So I think if the debate on that is finished, we're moving now to the vote on the original recommendation for the Joint Committee, which is to agree the principles for a revised ambition to address the climate emergency.
Okay, right.
If I may, Dan, I
Yep.
didn't get a chance to speak on the substantive. Obviously, the
Please speak in that case, Toby.
Just with the earlier issue that
Of course.
we had. So I just wanted to recognise the good work that is in this revised strategy, and to recognise the improvements that there have been since we considered the item at our previous meeting. That could be, so the paper is an example of collaboration. That collaboration didn't quite come as early as I think the rest of us were hoping for, in terms of how officers were instructed to not work with the constituent authorities over recent weeks. But in the end, there has been joint and collaborative working, and the paper is much better for it. So I support the recommendation, and I think we need to be working collectively to meet these principles and to be accountable to the public for the actions that we take. And I continue to believe that we need to have robust governance in place to ensure that it is a genuine collective endeavour and not potentially actions of only one of the 5 leaders. And I look forward to that genuine collaborative working in the weeks, months and years ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Toby. And if I could just comment on that. I mean, look, I come in with a new pair of eyes, and I don't see a lack of collaborative working. I see a history of things that have gone on before I arrived that may have created issues for people. But I'm concerned with the future, what happens from this point and forward, and I want to see us all working together. But that takes everybody to pull, and I don't witness or accept your analysis of it. I have to be very honest about it. Not least as we put bids together for huge amounts of money to government, where the government will know perfectly well that we work really closely together, because if we don't do that, they won't be supporting us. So I'm sure people understand, I'm making a very clear point here, that our close working is an essential part of our bid, and why I'm hoping we'll be successful. So I'll go back to the motion, and is there anybody else who wants to speak? Don.
Kevin.
Yeah, so thanks, Dan. First of all, I don't appreciate you using the word delay, because at no point does the motion or the addition say anything about delaying. We can crack on with it straight after the meeting. What it is saying is that the board itself needs to come, the detail of that board, the ambition of that board needs to come back here. There's nothing stopping the implementation of the refreshed climate emergency plan straight away. So nobody's suggesting a delay. What they're suggesting is that the detail of that board and the ambition of that board needs to be brought back to us, so we don't have the usual setup which has happened with the previous boards, which just becomes a talking shop, because the climate emergency is too important for another board to be created that's just a talking shop. So at no point is anybody here suggesting a delay. In fact, let's crack on with it and do it now. But what we're suggesting is that we want that the design of that board to come back here. And I don't understand why you don't want the design of that board to come back here. That's very frustrating.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Well, look, there is a delay in the sense of we're talking about October when we're in September. and I don't want to repeat myself. But look, what I can give you an absolute undertaking is that we will discuss the things that you're concerned about and others, okay? And we will thrash these out, and we will need to do that in a constructive and positive way. And I'm very positive about the fact that we will do that. I don't think it'll be easy, but we will do that. But what we won't do is allow anything to stop our extensive bids that are going to make a huge difference to our region, where the government are making available significant sums of money to us, provided we're successful in those bids. We've already secured £530 million. We're hoping to secure additional £400 million for our region. And I have to say that I know it's prior to Kevin's time, but I'm haunted by the fact that when I was in government, the then Labour government made available a lot of money for a tram system to run between Bristol and South Gloucestershire, and where local authorities couldn't get their act together, that money ended up going to Nottingham, where they enjoy a very good public transport system, including trams. And I want that for our region. So I think that's probably all I should say at this point. We're united, we're working hard to get that money, and I'm determined that we do that. Okay,
So
Ian, I'm sorry, can you...
So Dan.
Sorry, Don, come in.
So just for clarity, I thought the amendment was that we would get a report back for October, which is amendments fallen, yes? Have I understood right?
Sorry, Ian, did you pick up what Don said? Can you say that again? Don?
The
Sorry.
amendment that we put forward, which was voted down, was for a report back for October. And when Toby Savage has asked why, you've said lack of ambition in terms of time. Thank you. Now, I'm having great difficulty with this, because if I refer to pages 11 and 12 of the report, it's then saying that it's not going to be done until November, ready for the COP26 meeting. So what we're asking for is a more urgent piece of work with it in train in October, rather than wait until November, or have I misread that?
It's about the board, Don. It's about getting the board set up quickly,
Well, I
or
think
whatever we call it.
Well, the board, whatever it's going to be called, surely, if we're ready to do that in the October meeting, which isn't very long away, we'll then be ready and acting for the November COP26. So I'm thinking that the actual pages 11 and 12 imply less speed than our amendment was asking for. Have I misread it, Dan?
I'm saying to you, well, I'm not going to tell you you've misread it. We each read in our own way. But what I'm saying is, I want to get on with it. I really do, and I hope you support me in that. I don't want to slow it up.
No.
I think we've had a lot of constructive discussion. I think we do need to focus on that, colleagues, and we can talk about these things again. But I think it's really important that we get on with what is a climate emergency and dealing with it. And I appreciate you have strong views about it. You've made those known to me. I've made a decision to push on because I think that's really important for the reason I've already given, and I think that's probably enough said. Really. Ian, where are we at now, please, in terms of the motions, the votes?
If the debate is finished, I think we're going back to the original recommendation to the joint committee, which is to agree the principles for a revised ambition to address the climate emergency.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, in that case, I put that to the vote then. So all those in favour, please show. All those against? Okay, that's carried then, thank you. Okay, is there another amendment coming that we're aware of? No?
I think we're going back to the combined authority recommendation.
Okay, can we go to that then? In that case, can those in favour of the combined authority motion put that indicate now, please? Seconder. Good. Sorry, we got a seconder. Sorry, apologies. I'm getting so passionate about my environment, I'm forgetting where I'm at.
So, obviously, there's the recommendation as printed, which hasn't been proposed or seconded. And then there's the notice of a new recommendation, which has not yet been proposed or seconded either.
Okay.
Which one did you want to?
I want to take the first that you mentioned first, if that's okay. So if we could do that.
So that's the recommendation as printed.
Yep.
You're proposing that? Are you?
I am proposing that, yep. So is there a seconder?
No, not after that last show, no.
Okay, okay. Right. Ian, what do I do now? I'm stuck now.
So that falls.
That falls. Okay, so that's fallen. Okay, that's fine. No problem. Okay. Right, where are we at now, please? Item 9 in that case. Okay, thank you very much.
We've given notice of a new recommendation for item 8.
Yeah.
So we haven't finished that item.
Is that right, Ian? Am I correct? Is Toby correct in that? Let's be clear about this because this is quite important.
We've circulated the recommendation, and I referenced that when we were discussing
It's a new
the order in which
recommendation.
we would take things.
So if it's an amendment to the recommendation, then you can discuss that.
Is that the case, Toby, in your view?
It is a new recommendation which we have given notice of, and I would like to propose that.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah.
Okay, let's go. Let's roll with that. Okay, so that's item 8.
If it's helpful, Dan, I can read it out.
Yeah, why don't you do that? I got it in front of me, but just to be clear, it's the right one.
For the public's benefit. So the new recommendation is that an update report brought back to the October committee meeting setting out the roles and responsibilities of a new Environment Director post and its relationship with the Infrastructure Director and relevant member advisory boards, together with the associated financial implications. And that the report sets out options for how this post can be recruited to as quickly as possible, involving all members of the WECA committee in the appointment on a permanent contract basis. That wording has been circulated, in which I have now read. My reasons for proposing this new recommendation is that employing an interim director is going to be an expensive exercise, and I am concerned that this report does not include any financial implications that shows how much that individual will cost. There is an overall budget for all of this activity, but nothing specific about the costs associated with an interim director role. It's something that I had raised in advance of today's meeting, and is information which I have not yet received. For that reason, I cannot support the creation of that role to date, especially as the strong hint that it is a 6-figure sum. And I find it very difficult to be able to support the creation of that sort of role when at the same time as discussing this potential, we have lost a number of bus services across the WECA region, apparently because WECA does not have enough money to be able to continue to subsidise them. And I think it really takes the biscuit that there is apparently money available for extra bureaucracy in the form of hiring a new interim 6-figure director. I see that there are adverts on the WECA website for new communications officers. There seems to be an awful lot of money available for new bureaucracy, but not money available to support important local bus services, of which there are a number of petitions that have been launched across the WECA region. I think we should be focusing on getting the basics right and reinstating those services. And until I've got reassurance around how we are improving public transport, I simply can't support the creation of this new director role at this meeting. But as the amendment has made clear, that it can come back to our October meeting, provided that all those issues that I've referred to can be appropriately addressed.
Okay, thanks very much, Toby. Is there a seconder for that? No, okay.
I will second
You
it.
can.
I guess my issue is slightly different. Again, it's just about making sure that we're working together on these things. I think it comes as a bit of a surprise, and also interim roles are always very difficult, and it feels to me like local authorities should be involved in this conversation much more. If we're recruiting new permanent climate directors to the team, we should be involved in that conversation.
Yeah. Well, I thank you very much, Councillor Chairman. Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. I fully support the creation of a climate change director. I think it's really important because, like I stated before, that this should be embedded throughout everything we do at WECA and everything we do on local authority level as well. I would see this as eventually money well spent. But Toby makes a very good point about the interim nature of the appointment, and we don't want it to be set precedent that this is how directors are appointed. So although I fully support the creation of the director post, I do support Toby's analysis that we need to make sure this is getting value for money, and that goes back to the point about the creation of the board and integrating this new director within that board and giving them real teeth and real capability to do stuff. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
Kevin, thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wants to come in? So that's seconded, so can we put that to the vote? Before I do that, what I'd simply say to you is thank you, Kevin, for your positivity about the importance of the role, because I do believe that. But I understand the sincerity of some of the concern, but I refer to my previous point that, you know, I'm here concerned about today and tomorrow. I'm not concerned about the past. We have to get these things sorted. Because in my view, of all the directors that the Combined Authority will have, this will probably be the most important one, actually. And of course, we will always bend over backwards to give the information to anybody who legitimately has a right to ask for it about things like salaries and what that role is and how we appoint. And the rules are there to do that. And I want to reassure people that this is not setting a precedent for anything untoward or difficult or bad, Kevin, just so that you know. But it is about, we need to get on. We need the interim role, obviously dealing with it immediately because it's an important role, and we clearly need to get somebody really fantastic, actually. You know, it's not just anybody. We need to look really hard to find somebody who's going to really make a big difference. It's a hugely important central role to the Combined Authority region. So, you know, I really am very, very keen that we just crack on and get on in the way that we said. And the one thing I just say to Toby is, look, I understand why sometimes in politics people conflate things like bus services and what have you. But as you know, I've written to the Minister for Transport about the challenges that we have with our bus services, and that's been signed by several Conservative MPs from the region, the Liberal Democrat MP for Bath, and the 4 Bristol MPs, Labour MPs as well, because that's the reason we have trouble with the buses. It's nothing to do with this, frankly, and this is just a slight deliberate effort, I would suggest, to confuse it. Directors of environment are going to be very important, so are buses. They're separate things. We're going to deal with them. Okay, those in favour, please, as the amendment has been seconded, proposed and seconded. Those in favour of the amendment, please show. Those against? Those abstaining? Okay, so that falls for the reasons that I've given before on previous occasions. Okay. Can you remind where we're at now, Ian, please? Losing the will to live, Ian, so help me.
I think we're moving on to the next agenda.
You're right, okay, that's right. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you everybody who's watching live streaming and those in the audience today for persevering. Welcome to my world. Okay, right, next item. Item 9, the Green Recovery Fund. Hooray, we're on it. Okay, this report sets out a proposal in line with my manifesto commitment, as obviously published recently just before the May election, to earmark from the existing Combined Authority Investment Fund headroom £20 million for a Green Recovery Fund. Now, I can't tell you how important I think this is for all the reasons that we've heard. We've had a long day, so I won't rehearse it too much. But what I would say is that a lot of the emphasis will be on retrofitting. The amount of CO2 that literally is created, hot air that goes into the atmosphere from our homes, which are so inefficiently insulated, frankly, as well as some of our businesses too. There's amazing work goes on in the Combined Authority, actually, and in our unitary authorities to try and deal with some of these issues already. But I wanted this particular endeavour, this particular recovery fund, because I think it does lever in more money. I think it does create new and innovative ways of dealing with these challenges. And I want our region to be at the cutting edge in the country. I want us to show, because I believe the people are ahead of the politicians in our region, I want our region to show how you do it nationally. So that when the government, and I believe that there is sincere opinion held in the government. I don't think it's enough, I'll be honest, but I don't doubt that there are some sincerely held views in the government, and I believe that when, after COP and subsequently, people realise the importance of what we need to do to save the planet, and those resources are made available, and I believe they'll be made available in huge amounts, I want to be the first in the queue. I want our region to be the first to say, we want that, and we can do really amazing things with that and make a real difference. So that's what this is all about. I now move the recommendation for the Combined Authority Committee as set out in the report. Can I call for a seconder, please?
If I just may speak to say that
Yep.
I'm not in a position to be able to second this recommendation.
Okay.
But just give notice and a reminder that a new recommendation
Yep.
has been circulated.
That's right.
Which in due course we'll want to consider.
Okay, thank you, Toby. Thanks for pointing that out very clearly. Kevin, do you want to come in, please?
Yeah, so I think this is for the benefit of the general audience here. I fully support the Green Recovery Fund, and I think it is long overdue. And we, as leaders and mayors, have had private conversations with officers about actually this Green Recovery Fund should be far, far, far more adventurous than it is. So if you look at the West End Combined Authority, you've got a huge budget coming close to £1 billion. If I said to you, we're going to make a Green Recovery Fund of 20 million, it sounds like a lot of money. But actually, in the bigger picture, the £20 million, when it's spread out all over the west of England, isn't really very ambitious, and it's not very bold at all. So we've had these private conversations to make this Green Recovery Fund bigger and bolder and more ambitious. And the Mayor has promised that he will try and do that. But he also promised that we would be far more ambitious with the board. So when I seconded the previous motion, I was hoping that he would agree with me and become more ambitious. So although I really, really want to second this Green Recovery Fund, because I'm hoping that the Mayor will then say, yes, Kevin, I completely agree with you, this fund needs to be bigger and bolder, I'm very concerned that he won't listen to us and he will vote against us and will just push it through on his own. So therefore, I can't second it because I don't think it's bold enough, I don't think it's ambitious enough. And what I'm saying is exactly the same thing as the climate emergency ambition. We should have agreed it before it came to this meeting, or we should have taken it off the table. So I don't think the Mayor's going to get somebody to second it, not because we don't want a Green Recovery Fund, we want the Green Recovery Fund to be at least 3 times bolder. So that is why I cannot currently second it in its current state.
Okay, can I just check, is anybody seconding that, just in case there's some surprise event in the next few seconds? Okay, in that case, that item will come to the October meeting. Can I just say, though, for the record, for those who are listening, I hope it's a lot more ambitious. This is what I was working out I could afford when I did my manifesto. And if it can be a lot more than that, no one will be happier than me. So, look, we'll all pull together. It'll be at least 20 million. I think we're clear about that. I think that is what we can agree. We can all nod to. But what matters is obviously that if there are additional monies that we can bring to it, we do that. My chief executive has heard that, so we will now be going away looking to see what resources may or may not be available. I make no promises, but I'm absolutely determined to share Kevin's ambition and the other people's ambition that we do even more in this area, because it is so important. Okay, thank you.
Can we move on?
Yeah, of course.
Just have it noted that we're looking at a figure of at least 3 times where we are. So I'd like it noted that I request that the Green Recovery Fund be at least £60 million.
Okay, what I've been told by my tutor is we'll get the section 151, let's speak properly, I'm getting cotton out. We will look for that money, and I hear the 60 million ambition, Kevin, I don't have any problem with that. If we could do that, wouldn't that be amazing? But we've got to go and look to see what's there, because we don't have money just lying around, okay, despite what people like to think. We've got some amazing bids coming in for other areas, but we can't confuse it, because they're different pots for different things. And this is, we've heard already that this is important because it could lever in more money. So we will look to lever in even more if we can make it bigger. I give you that undertaking. Okay, right.
Are we moving on that item?
Yes, we are.
We haven't finished it yet.
Well,
because there's a recommendation for the West of England Joint Committee. The noting, and colleagues may want to comment on the framework.
Okay. Okay, so
before we go on to the Joint Committee, I did give notice that there was a new recommendation around.
Yep.
But in terms of what you've just said, potentially we might not have to move this recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
Because as Kevin said, we are in full agreement about the need to create a green recovery fund and the principle of that. I think the concerns we have is the level of ambition and the level of amount. So I'm recognising that you did your sums, pre-election. The new sums that are around now show that we can be far more ambitious around that.
Okay.
And that's the view of all the councils and the views that we've shared with WECA officers over the past few weeks. I think that just the verbal assurance that you could give now that where we wouldn't need to move a recommendation is to be clear about the collaboration that will be done by the WECA Chief Executive with the Unitary Authority Chief Executives on this. So when it comes back in October, it's not simply a document that only you and Tricia have worked on. So if you could just give us verbal assurances around the level of collaboration that you're prepared to offer on this.
Look, what I'm happy to say is that we will need to work ever closely and more closely than ever to achieve this. I am really glad that you agree with the principle of the idea. I agree that we need to be more ambitious and have more money. And I think that I'm very encouraged to think that we will be able to work better and closer together, as I think we are in this discussion, in fact. And I hope that will be sufficient for you, Toby, because I'm acutely aware that government are always keen to be sure that all unitary authorities and combined authorities work really closely together to secure money. And I wouldn't want people to get completely the wrong idea that we don't want money the government's making available. So I'm sure you'll understand what I'm saying, Toby, and I hope you'll take my undertakings as sincerely as they're given to you and accept that will be the case, okay?
Thank you, Dan. I will accept the sincerity of your undertakings today and hope that I'm not disappointed in a few weeks' time.
Okay, I hear that very clearly.
Because welcome to our world.
Yeah, okay.
It's not usually done, but is it possible to feedback from the scrutiny committee about?
Yeah, apparently I do have the jurisdiction to do that, so I'm going to say no. Yes, go on.
Just that, this is how meetings are done, during COP26. If we can't get leaders to agree with immediacy, then, we're never going to reach the 2030 goal. What councillors might understand when watching this meeting is why you can't work towards 20 million and then extend the fund afterwards. As in, is there any harm in in having the pot now so you can actually get, move on from business as usual, which is disagreement within the authority. For the next meeting, this is something that most councillors watching this would not understand. Could you just feedback why you cannot agree now and then change in October so that we can get the ball rolling and work towards our climate ambitions and climate action?
Hugh, you make a very valid point. You make my point, in fact. That's what I would want and would hope. But I think that these are strong leaders who know their own mind, and they've given their reasons. And I'm hoping that we will be able to find even more ambitious plans in the very near future, not too far off, and move forward. It would be nice to get on with the 20 million, because I think it's not a good headline to say that we voted down something like this. I have to be honest. I think it's a misjudgment. But other leaders have different views, and on this occasion they haven't seconded what I was hoping they would do. So look, we will work extra hard together. We're hearing what everyone's having to say. We're hearing the reactions, and we will do what we can to get that 20 million in as soon as possible, and even higher if possible. Okay.
Thank you for the unusual indulgence.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Can I just comment?
Yeah,
one of the problems that we have with the paper is the lack of clarity about where the funding comes from. So what is being deprioritised to prioritise this, and at the moment that's not clear. So until that's clear, and you would respect that as a councillor, that you would expect to know the funding source for something, or at least what was being deprioritised to prioritise. And I think that's just what we would want to get to the bottom of. So fully, absolutely 100% support of the 20 million. In fact, 60 million would be remarkable.
Well, we'll bring it back. Thank you very much, Councillor. We'll bring it back to the October meeting with a wider look at the investment fund, and hopefully we'll all be cheering each other, and people will see our collaboration on every front page of all the local press and media. Okay, that'd be great. Okay, I think I'm right in saying I can now declare the meeting closed. Am I right? Good. I'm pleased about that. Cheers. Well, I'd like the meeting to be closed a little while ago, to us, but there you are. Okay, that concludes our business for today. Thank you. Oh, sorry, what am I doing? Sorry. Oh God, this combined and joint. Okay, let's move to the. Okay, right. Okay.
So can we speak to it?
Why not? I'm in a good mood today.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Okay. Right, thanks, Don. Go on then.
I mean, yes, we members of the Joint Committee do note the fund's objectives and framework, but
Yeah.
I think we need to put it very much on the record, the comments that my colleagues have made around their ambitions for the size of the fund. Craig Cheney has made some very valid points about making it very clear as to where the funding is coming from and what we're not going to be doing in future as a result of it. And also, I do think that if we are to demonstrate our ambition, which has been a very long-running theme throughout this whole meeting, that it's incumbent upon the combined authority, because this isn't money that's being spent by the Joint Committee, it's being spent by the combined authority. The combined authority, in association with the constituent councils, gets a plan that's considered and noted in October, as opposed to having a rerun of this same piece. I think the most important thing for me is to get that ambition out there and articulate what we're going to do with it. And equally what we're not going to do, because we're not spending that money because we're putting it into the green recovery. And that isn't clear to me as a Joint Committee member. And I think it needs to be very much to the fore for the October meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thanks, Don. Appreciate your contributions as always. Look, thank you, everybody. The meeting is now closed, I hope.
Yeah.
I can declare that. Thank you very much. You never know these days. That concludes our business today. At last, and thank you to everyone attending, and in particular, can I thank Watermore Primary School here in Frampton Cotterell, or Colpit Heath, depending on how you measure it. Thank you very much.
He's asking for the motion. An email from Lena about the motion. For the press. For you, isn't it? Okay, that's me.
No, it's always going to be. Thank you, guys.
I'm sure it will all come back.
It will get better. It is not. I'm not from the
No.
Okay, we'll persevere to get there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's the one that, yeah, with the additions, yeah, that's it. So she can have a copy of it, can't she? Yeah, okay.
Well done, Ian.
No problem.